Hey, Ra.
Here we are.
Holy smokes, man. I gotta tell you, this is beautiful. I miss you.
I wish I was there, but I'm not. So
Are you still getting
I'm here.
over a little bit?
Uh, I feel healthy, but yeah, there's some stuff in my nose, like you were just saying, dealing with some mucus. It is also getting really cold, and I'm still going outside,
Yeah.
with no shirt on. Like I was walking on the beach yesterday, and it was super windy, so um, my body might be with me on that journey, fighting some things.
Or just clearing something out. I mean, listen, we just went through a massive cleansing everywhere. Everybody, 29 degrees yesterday. Everything was crazy. Things were going weird. People were setting boundaries with themselves, their future. They're telling a new story to themselves right now. So this is all going on. But in order to do that, I have to also clear up all the crap that I've been living in my body in my life, because those stories attracted what's in my life. So everybody's body is going crazy right now.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us can recognize that are aware that some things happen in our life, right? Like if we want to be stronger, then we go through challenges in order to develop the strength. But it's the same thing even inside of our body. If we've been praying or intending on some upgrades at any level, then even the insides, our cells need to go through their own challenges in order to build the strength for the upgraded version of you, just like you're saying.
Well, it's way that people can get this is that I have a really shitty attitude. So if I'm angry or frustrated or like crapping on myself, then everybody around me gets affected by that. And so that means I drag every part of my reality, including the people, into that shitty energy and shitty. Well, the same thing is my narrative and my body. If I change my narrative and then my body has to change, and then all the stuff that was, so if I become a better person in my mind, then my body has to upgrade. And then so
Right.
anything, including the cells, the bacteria, the viruses, anything that's not resonant with that new frequency has to go or has to adapt. And that's what we call sickness. It's the adaptation to a new frequency.
And that's why, like, I've heard people that channel extraterrestrials or other dimensional beings, and one of the first things that they say starts going wonky when you start upgrading or ascending is your digestive system, because it's just not used to the new frequencies that you're resonating at. And all those bacteria are entities in their own right. And so that whole environment starts to shift, and then you get digestive issues for a little bit.
Well, because our biome is what paints, like if I switch from being depressed and angry, all of a sudden my serotonin, my dopamine, oxytocin goes up, my testosterone goes up, then all of a sudden the world looks bright and friendly. What changed was my microbiome. So yeah, when you're going through an upgrade, in order to see a new world, I have to change my bacteria. And remember, we have trillions of cells, but our bacteria have trillions of cells too.
Right. I mean, they're making up most of our body. We're holobionts. We're a collection of entities. And you're right. If they change, that essentially means die off, right? I mean, some need to die, and then some need to start thriving. Different ones become more capable. And yeah, serotonin is most of that's produced in the gut. A little bit extra is produced in the pineal gland, which I think is pretty interesting as well, that what makes us happy is produced in the pineal gland and the gut. If those are out of balance, or yeah, if those are out of balance, then we're depressed, right?
Yeah,
Or what we know of as
yeah.
depressed.
And depression, since we don't have emotions in the brain, this is connected directly to this. So depression, pressure. If I have pressure in my stomach, I get depression.
Right. To
That's what my
press
brain.
in.
Yeah,
Depression means depression. So the internal pressures of our body is weaker than the external forces that we're dealing with,
right,
and we are depressed.
right.
I like to say the way out of depression is expression, because depression means to push in, expression means to push out or up. And so, along with the microbiome, if we're also just laying down on the couch all day and we're not expressing ourselves with our voice, with our actions, then we're going to literally be depressed. There's
So when you're laying on the couch, if you have too much compression, you don't feel like expressing yourself. Expression is to get up and move.
right.
So compression takes away expression.
Nice, yeah.
So,
And so you're saying that when you're on the couch, there's just more compression on your body
or let's say
systematically.
I have some bad stuff going on with my bacteria. It's pulling everything in. I'm dehydrated. I'm dehydrated. It takes more energy to move. I don't want to express myself as much. Movement is expression. And if I'm restricted, I don't even breathe as much. The original movement is breath. So if I want to express myself, I have to release restriction. If I release restriction, I'm easier to move. That's why when we work on them, when they do fascial maneuvers, they're like, I want to go run. Like we're just doing some work training
Instantaneously, right?
instantaneously. Yeah. Like we're working on a guy here who's a Libra. He's all torqued up like this, right? And then we really quickly in 5 minutes gave his fascia a straightening protocol. And he's like, I want to go for a run.
I mean, if people don't understand how that works, like instantly you could be spun out of control, and instantly you could be uh, aligned back into a healthy life force. Maybe if it's been 10 years that you haven't, and that's instantaneous. And a lot of people, they don't understand that. But like if you think about, if you hear bad news, like instantly you now, like 5 minutes before you could have been ready to give a presentation. And then if you hear bad news, it's like all of that life force drains out of you. And then the reverse of that would be like, let's say you just broke up with your lover, and for 2 weeks you're just moping around because you didn't want the breakup, and then this person calls you or texts you, like instantly everything's back in alignment, and you're like up, you're cleaning your house, you're getting dressed, you're like excited. And so the body and the cells is basically like a function of your perspective of what's going on around you, and that's what's instructing.
That's it. It's perception.
Right.
Yeah, we're master perceptionists, even if we don't think we are. If I perceive the world is going to hurt me, it does. And so if I was to perception, if I was to tell you that Carolina was in a car accident and she's being rushed to the hospital, your whole body goes into shock. Your
Right.
digestion stops, your nervous system goes, your cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine fires, your perception narrows, your ability to perceive goes away. All of that happens. Then if I told you 10 minutes later, oh, sorry, that was a different Carolina. Then you go, oh my God, thank you. I was so scared. And then you start coming out of shock. It takes 4 to 6 hours for those chemicals to leave your body, but the trauma is still there. And the trauma is there, but it was just a perception. So the only thing that changed was your perception of the information I gave you or your current reality. So that means that perception affects all biology in the body, and we're working on getting people with the right food, the right exercise, doing the right things, the right daily routines. And you could do all that right, but if your perception is that you fear that your spouse is going to, or your partner is going to leave you, or you fear that you're not going to be safe, it don't matter. You can do everything right and it doesn't work because the perception overwhelms the experience. And perception is the highest state of awareness, but we don't name a practitioner that you sit down with and says, okay, let's talk about your perception of these environments. What's going on before I touch your body? And I had this with Lisa yesterday. She's been around us for a year. So it's not okay to have a problem in your body and not talk about it. I mean, you can have problems in your body. So she's going through and having all these problems in her body, but she's not saying anything. Finally, she asked for help in the group here, and brave for doing it. Thank God that she did it, because it taught everybody a lesson. And so I didn't touch her. She was a level 9 pain. She went from 9 to a 1 pain with just talking about the perception. And then we touched the body. And I was saying, If I'm touching the body before I deal with the perception, then that whatever I fix is just going to come up somewhere else.
Yeah. Like elastic. It's going to go back somewhere.
Yes.
And that's interesting about the chemicals, because if we get triggered and then we find out that that trigger wasn't really, as bad as we thought it was, our body's still reacting as if, whatever the original cause of that trigger was, whatever, childhood trauma
Right.
or whatever. And it's really difficult to separate, my body's reacting because it's triggered of something happening in the external environment, to understand the difference between that and what's actually happening in your external environment not being as bad as your physical and emotional reaction to it. And to be able to like dance with that and still have like coherent conversations with people is a mark of someone who's emotionally intelligent and would be successful, because they're not governed by their triggers, and they're able to recognize the difference.
So we decided, since we're working with perception and trigger has such a negative connotation, trigger is a clue. It's a
Right.
cue that something's going on, to a clue to tell you to look. Because if you're triggered by something in your environment external from you, it's not the environment's fault. It's the fact that I responded in a deleterious way, in a way that needed, that's a clue. The trigger that we used to call a trigger, we're now calling it a clue.
Yeah, it's self-responsibility too, right? It's like a window into, it's a clue. It's exactly what it is. It's a clue.
Yeah. So that's because we don't have to, because again, perception is trigger means all this bad things. Like when people say, like, it looks like Dr. McCrump says, wondering if I have to be sick as an indication of getting better or upgrading. And that's not necessarily true, but think of the word sick. Sickness is a condition that leads to death. Now, has your condition over the last 2 weeks been leading you to death? No.
Oh, you're talking to me.
Yeah,
No.
your condition for the last 2 weeks has not been leading you to death. It's been improving something. You've been working through something to get stronger and better. So if I call it sick, I'm not leading to death. Is that what you're talking about, Dr. McCrump?
Also, healing is another, like, no, I guess he's asking, or he can't see the things small, but the question has to do with, like, do we have to go into this phase in order to be upgrading? And I feel that all of these, like, even healing is a phase that people go through where they're always healing.
Yes.
They're always
we're always healing. There's always
but
death and rebirth in ourselves. It's called anabolic versus catabolic.
right. But the noticing of that and the sitting in that and the taking a week to heal, that's all a phase that you'll go through, and we won't need to sit in it for so long eventually, or it shifts a little bit and the whole process evolves, and it'll feel different 10 years from now than it does today.
Okay, well, so here's the thing is, Jason, Cynthia, and I, and Aisha, we're all different, right? So when we were doing the fast and stuff like that, I felt everything in my body. Jason felt everything in his perception, and Cynthia felt it in her feelings. So these guys are having like perception, death, and rebirth, and I'm just like puking over in the corner. Like mine's very physical. I could say it, right?
Yeah. That's what I mean. We all experience the same things a little bit different depending on a lot of aspects, I'm sure.
It's also what we're experiencing. But I have found this. Okay, so I found that like air signs, for example, tend to have more of it in their perception and in their head. And I find that like earth signs, like Virgos, anybody like a Virgo or a Taurus or whatever, tends to have it more in their body. And then water signs tend to have it more in their emotions. Now, you can't just say a Pisces who has more in their emotions, because their moon or their emotions might be in fire, might be Sagittarius, but just a kind of a general rule. But we definitely found that I process everything in the body. Cynthia, Cynthia finally, when we got here, she had 103 fever. And I'm like, and I'm kind of like, because it's always me in the body. And I'm like, hey, honey, do you
You're
need anything?
laughing.
Yeah. She's like, because now she's got it in the body, right? And she took her like 3 days to go through it. But you know what's funny? She had 103. So I'll finish that off. So, anyways, she had it in the body, and I knew that it's a big change for her because for her normally it doesn't come that way. So, but what was funny is she's 103 degrees, and she's like rolling around and like wants me to do something. Can I do something? And I said, look, you want to get rid of this really quick because she hasn't done it yet. I said, drink your urine, baby. To drink her urine. Within an hour, she's up down here talking to everybody, no fever, all that. And then I said, we got to do it more than once today. You're in that mode. You got to give yourself a couple of shots. So she didn't do that night. Her fever is back up. So she walked through the day. It didn't feel perfect, but she was mobile and she looked good. And then went back into fever less, like probably around 100, 101. But, and then, so the next morning, it's up to you, man. You get your choice. She did it again. She's bam, up, working around and stuff like that. And then middle of the day or through the middle of the afternoon, she starts to crash again. I take it again. She boom, back up again. It was so powerful. It was so visceral for her because I'm wanting her to do it, but I'm not going to force her or bug her to do it. So when she did it, she got to see, like, I couldn't even, like, I literally couldn't talk to anybody or cognate. Now I am.
It's medicinal.
Hey, but
it's
you
didn't
you do a urine fast?
Yeah, for 3 days. That was actually my first fast ever was
Yeah,
urine.
your first fast and you did it with urine.
Yeah. And it was because I was at a time in my life where I ran out of money. And I was like, I guess I'm fat. I was wanting to fast. I was wanting to do a urine fast for like, months or years, but there was never like the moment where I wasn't exercising a lot or it just never, it was never there was always an excuse not to do it. And then I was closing my gyms. I was going through a transition and then I just one day ran out of money and I was like, okay, I have enough money for water. So I got some water and then I did urine for three
So
days.
what was
And
your experience? Out of curiosity.
so I actually it was anabolic for me.
Yeah,
Uh,
lots of it, lots of building and energy, right?
yeah, so my my body proportions changed and I was anabolic and then you start craving your
Yeah,
urine. So
yeah,
then it was like there was that. And yeah, it was very pleasant for me. And I came out after 3 days. It was like the first fast I ever did. And I just felt fantastic. I felt like I looked good and felt good.
yeah. So it actually changes the way the way the muscles look and that. Like when you first do it, if you're not doing it for sickness, if you're doing it for health, and you do it and you don't eat, it's because what it does is at nighttime, your body's healing itself. And it's a massive, so it creates all these hormones to heal itself, and it uses a lot of energy to do that. In the morning, those hormones are in your urine with stem cells. So you drink it. So instead of going back to zero and starting again and then going back to zero, you go up, and then you stop. In the morning, you go right from here and you go up, and then you go right from here and you go up. So the hormones that your body would use energy to make, all of a sudden those hormones go back into your body, the healing hormones, and then you're healing yourself. It's an amazing. It's like climbing a ladder. That's what you were feeling.
Yeah, I took a picture. I was surprised that my body, like, it looked like I was, not that I've ever taken anabolic steroids or anything, but it looked like that was just what I can describe it as. It was like 3 days and I got jacked. It was crazy. And that was before I even knew anything about it. I just had heard stories throughout my entire life of like Russian fighters or indigenous people using it in certain ways. I just heard stories about it from different people, and obviously I know Troy. I know you were on with him a couple of days ago. I watched a little bit about that.
I'm
Troy
waiting.
and Eric.
I'm going to have him come on once a week through his 28-day reset, and then I'm going to ask him all the questions about urine mixed in between.
Yeah. Yeah. So I
And
just I just trusted that it was the thing to do, and I did it, and it was amazing. And then I started researching it after and asking questions and finding out that like in Taoism it's like a huge thing. There's a huge PDF called The Healing Power of Urine Therapy, I
hey,
think,
can
if
you
you just Google
find
that.
that and send it to me? I like to take and post that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll put it. I'll put a link in our app. I'll put it up in our app as a document. I'll put a link in the app and in our Money Network portal, and then I'll put it on our Instagram so people can go get it.
Yeah, Montauk Chia wrote that one. I don't know, like, so however people feel about him is beside the
Yeah,
point.
I
But
mean, look at it's information, and
yeah,
you know, and Troy, he's 58 years old. I mean, that guy. If you took and you gave him a modern haircut, like if you give him a shorter haircut with stuff like that, like just a little like that, that guy would. You couldn't tell that guy wasn't like 30.
I know. I mean, you know what's impressive about Troy is how bright his eyes are.
Yeah.
Like e- every time I see him, his eyes are so like piercingly bright and white. They're crazy. I met Troy, I would say in 2012. He came up to me in a farmer's market and just because I was buying a bunch of organs, 2011, 2012. And this whole organ thing I was doing a long time ago. And I know that you're not doing the animals,
Yeah, but
but a long time ago.
I did. Hold on, but that's been a big part of my life. So it's just that right now I'm on plant-based. That doesn't mean I'm not going to go back to eating meat, but it also doesn't mean that I'm going to stop eating every day. And I
Right.
think I'm leaning towards more because I fasted for 6 months last year.
Yeah, it's like because you're going in the direction of getting the power from the elements, from the
Yeah,
light,
yeah.
the water, the earth, the air, and that's that's all super fascinating to me as well. But yeah, Troy came up to me and was like, he saw me with like testicles and liver and kidney, and he was like, what are you doing? I don't see many people with. I had like a whole cart full of it. And I was like, oh, I own some gyms in downtown LA. I'm a competitor. I'm an athlete. And this is, what I use to recuperate. And then, yeah, then we would see each other all the time in Santa Monica
So
Beach.
he
And
just literally randomly walked up because of what you're buying.
yeah,
And that is
Troy is an
that's
amazing
hilarious.
conversationalist. I've been with him at parties and I've seen him meet like 20 people in like 20 minutes. He literally just walks up to people, makes a comment to them, like usually a compliment, and says, "Hey, I'm Troy. Nice to meet you." And then the conversation starts. I'm just like, I'm sort of like in my head. I identify as an introvert if I need to label myself. And so it's like Troy's the exact opposite of me. I guess I always attract people into my life that's the opposite of me. But yeah, I'm just fanboying
But
about
your
Troy right now.
pronouns are superhuman, introvert, uh, brainiac.
Yeah, yeah,
Those are your pronouns.
yeah, yeah.
SA
That's,
superhuman.
and fascial maneuver specialist. Yeah. Um,
FMS.
right.
Functional movement screening. Yeah, we'll take over that FMS name.
I
So
remember that.
yeah. Remember the
Overhead
functional movement?
squat,
Yeah, yeah. Remember the functional movement screening we used to
walk.
do?
Yeah.
So it's interesting because like here's what I see happening is that so when I started, it was funny because when I started talking about urine therapy more now, I've used it clinically for over a decade, but I didn't have it as a daily practice. For me, it's like something I'm going to do if I'm sick. So when I implemented it as a daily practice, the way I did it was funny because in Lions Bay, which I can't wait for you to come up there this summer and check it out. Lions Bay is just amazing, but we're on a mountain looking over the ocean. And when we're there, the water's filtered in the facility. So then I have a diatomaceous, Irish sea moss, borax bath, and usually some oils in it or something like that, or I'll put some aloe. And then I urinate in the bath a little bit. And then I'm like, I'm trying to consolidate my energy, so I don't want to go downstairs and put all that stuff back in a cup. So I just like take a glass and drink it, right? And I'm and this happened this summer. So I was kind of not, and I would always urinate in the bath because the urine helps the skin and all the ailments. It comes in that way. So I was still absorbing it, but what happened was is that all of a sudden I had no desire for plant medicine. All my food cravings went away. I no longer wanted anything to do with sugar. I mean, it was just like this weird change, and I was feeling really good. My energy was stable. I wasn't sleeping that much, and I get into this I'm about like 3 or 4 weeks into this, about maybe 3.5 weeks, and I said, I wonder what, I've noticed that I had all this energy, all these changes, but like, what am I doing different in my life? And I'm like, oh, I'm drinking my bath water, but I'm like, what's different about my bath water? Because everything in it was the urine. And I'm like,
Wait, hold on. You're taking a bath and then drinking the actual water that you're bathing in?
yeah,
That's sad. That's some savage stuff right there.
yeah. Well, I mean,
Um,
but hold on. Put it in perspective. I bath. That was my morning bath, but I bath 3 to 4 times a day. So
all right.
what happens is like I don't have a lot of, like, I'm not getting in a dirty bath usually or whatever. And what I do is the morning bath it's the fresh bath, and then throughout the day the bath gets cold. And when I'm in a meeting or something like that, I go get in the bath, I clean all my energy, and I come back out. That's how I can stay fresh and on lives and talking to people all day.
Which is one of the incredible things about you. I was just talking about somebody else, but yeah, you are impressive with the amount of connection that you have to all of these people through technology and in person. It doesn't end when Gary turns off this phone and he literally ends the live, and then he's got 20 other people that he's just doing this all day long. It's
Yeah.
crazy to me to watch. I mean, maybe crazy is the wrong word, but it's impressive.
It was,
Sure.
it was something I wouldn't have been able to do that when we started doing this. I'd do a live, and then or we'd have like a workshop, and then I'd be down for like 4 hours. So it's because the emotions, I'm balancing out the emotions constantly. And when I keep and what it is that it's like if I have a conversation that's really emotionally taxing, I feel tired. But it's only emotionally taxing because I'm still holding on to emotions that are relevant to the
Getting
conversation.
stuck.
Yeah.
It's getting stuck, right? That the energy is coming in through your pelvis, and then it's working its way up through your spine, and then out through your higher centers, or you're looping it back in. And if it's getting stuck in your fear zone or your heart, and you're holding on to it, and it's just getting caged there, yeah, it starts to wear you down. And that's how all of us process everything. It goes in through your pelvis and it comes around. So our fields, yeah, it's collecting other fields of energy as we move around the earth. And if those energies aren't moving through us like a clean vessel, then they get stagnant. And then that's when we start to feel it, and it gets heavy.
So somebody asked, couldn't you stood up and drink the urine? So I do drink my urine non-diluted, but I was explaining the process of which I went to make it a daily routine. And it was just kind of literally, it's like, because I'm always looking for efficiencies. I'm like, if I go downstairs and have to put diatomaceous earth in my glass with a little bit of boric acid, with a little bit of salts or whatever, I'm like, I'm already here. I should just do it here. I'm just saving time and energy. That's for me. I'm just maximizing it. So, and the other thing I can say is that as my fascia's opened up and my liquid crystal has been clear, I need less. So I need less food. I need less sunlight. I need less satiation from everything. It's like I tell people, when I started in practice, a homeopathic worked more effectively than it does today on people. Like today we use 2 or 3 times the dose if I'm telling somebody to use a homeopathic, because they're more clogged than they were even 12, 13, 14 years ago. So as we clean up our bodies, we become more, I need less stimulation to create the same effect, if that makes sense for M-Buck 73.
And a homeopathic dose is essentially, I mean, your urine has urine in it, but homeopathy doesn't even have the ingredient
None of it.
that you're taking, right? It's just like the energy. Could you explain that? Because
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
people don't understand
So I'll
that.
explain
Like,
it. So if I want liver as a drop, like we used to give liver drops or kidney drops, so I do is I take liver, put it and soak it in water. Okay. So the water, I don't know how long it is. I think it's 3 days. It could be longer, but the liver sits in the water. Then I take that water, I run it through a distiller. So the distiller takes out everything, apparently, like
yeah,
all the yeah. So I distill it, and then that distilled water I take and distill it again, and I do it 30 times. The same
over and
thing,
over and over and
yeah,
over again.
30
Yeah.
times. It's like the vodka that you get, right? Distilled vodka. That's why if you drink alcohol and your alcohol is not organic, people go, it's distilled. Ah ha ha! If you use GMOs, you're still getting it because signaling. So on the 30th distillation cycle, what happens is now you have the signaling in your body, and then your body is now creating the hormones and everything that it needs to based on that signaling pathway. But think about it this way: we try to one of the ways that you can experience this is do a 3-day spit fast. So you eat your food, but you don't swallow it. You just chew it up, spit it out. So what happened for us when we did it is like our stomach would go, the acid would go in our stomach, the small intestine would go, even the stomach acid would come, even though that we didn't have weight in there, the flap, because the stomach had memorized the action of eating those foods. And our liver would fire, and by the third day, you could feel each organ working. So here's it, and then take that another step further. It's like when I say drugs don't make you high, and I'll give you the reasoning behind that statement, is that if I eat 10 pounds of food and water, I urinate, defecate, breathe, sweat out 10 pounds. So technically, this is the whole argument about I need to eat more protein, right? It's like a drug. If I take a drug and I do it every day, like psilocybin, I have to do more to have the same effect over time. Well, that's the same thing with drug. A food is a medicine or a drug. Food's a drug.
Right.
So if I
Yes.
get if my body knows how to build glycine, use the glycine and build proteins to help repair muscle and tissue from eating meat, well, that's heroin to the body. So once it's on heroin, it doesn't want to go back to wheat.
It forgets the processes that it can do naturally to build its own proteins and
Right,
peptides.
right. And this is where people go, I've tried it, it doesn't work. Well, yeah, well, what I did is I fasted for 44 days. I reset my whole memory system. It was the weirdest thing at the end of the 44-day fast. We went back to eating food, and here's the experience. It's like, I know I like that food, but I have no memory of what it tastes like. Memory. To remember, if I was to dismember you, I cut you in pieces. To remember is I take pieces and put it back together for a presentation. So we had no feeling for the food anymore. So the memory was based on a feeling. And if I don't have a feeling, I can't remember. That's superpower, and we just remember things without knowing that there's a feeling attached to that cycle because it happens so quick.
Yeah, and the feeling is what's going to stimulate the action
Correct.
to
So,
eat it,
so
to
the
desire
body
it.
is a series of habitual reactions to the environment, and the more I take that action, the more I get used to it, the more I need. Like I did psilocybin every day for a year. And
Microdose.
well, I
Or was
started,
major
yeah, it was
dose.
always a microdose, but microdose when I started was 0.3 or 0.5. But by the
Ah,
end of the year, I'm doing 7 to 10 grams a day.
that's like hero's dose for most
Yeah,
people.
but the thing was, is I was never high ever once. Well, that's not true. There was a couple of times where we got high, but generally it was because the body gets used to it, and that's the same thing as eating meat. So this is why, and I wanted, like, people can say whatever they want to say. Like I've done all the lab testing on people of every diet style you can imagine. I've done tens of thousands of tests, including IgG, IgA panels, hormone panels. I've done functional nutrition absorption tests. I've done blood tests, and I've done subclinical testing on literally over 10,000 active people with 50,000 tests to develop this belief system, which was I wanted to try and go plant-based, but I but I couldn't. Every time I needed to have a piece of meat once or twice a week. Otherwise, my body wouldn't, and I'd eat the meat and I would feel like I'd worked out. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where I started realizing that this is all habitual memory. You know, like Wade Lightheart from Biooptimizers, he's 50 years old, just won the Mr. North America.
Wow.
But he did that. He's plant-based. You can't tell me you can't build muscle with plant-based, because you got too many guys that are doing it. So this is why, and this is, and if you guys are plant-based or carnivore guys, I'm going to just tell you, just get off of it right now. There'll be a point in your life you will change. And there's always an example of somebody who's done it for 20, 30 years and looks great, but the body wants contrast in order to change. If the body
mean get off of the dogma?
Yeah, off the dogma, yeah, get off the dogma about it, because the body needs contrast to change. If I give the body the same thing, if I work out the same, if I take the same drug all the time, it will stop reacting properly. That's no different with food. And so if I give my body, that's why fasting is so powerful, because I fast and then I eat again, my body goes, oh, and it starts to rebuild. It populates. Your body wants change. And here's the most important thing about diet. We are fighting over what diet style, like carnivore, paleo, vegan, or whatever. But none of us are fighting about chemicals or not. So for me, I don't care what your diet style is, you're good with it. As long as you feel good, it's working for you, you continue it until it doesn't. And if it doesn't, be open to try something else. But if you're eating chemicals, you're going to have a problem. There's no way around it. You're going to have sickness at one point, no matter what.
Yeah, because those are unnatural. But what you're talking about is metabolic flexibility, right?
Yes.
I think that's what it's called, where you have capabilities of digesting different diets, essentially. And I think that the key to that is that you're going to have an internal guidance system. There's going to be either intuition, or you're listening to the bacteria in your body that's going to draw you to a certain style of eating. And if you have a dogma, you tend to ignore those urges or those desires to eat a certain way. So if you free yourself from the dogma, then you essentially just listen to your internal guidance system.
So let's go back to what we started with. My perception is that I'm in fear or in danger, it doesn't matter what I eat, I won't absorb the nutrients. If I'm in fear, my body cannot digest, process, and eliminate. So the dogma creates fear. So someone was talking about meat, brain metabolism. I appreciate what you're saying, but fundamentally in my own life, after being a bodybuilder, eating roughly 180 to 280 grams of protein every day of my life for 40 some odd years, and then being on plant-based, and then trying other diets in between, and having the opportunity to work with some of the world's top athletes and doctors and testing 10,000 people, I can't find that to be true. And I have way better, I'm stronger and better than I ever was today. And I don't eat, it's not that I eat plant-based, I barely eat. I probably eat less than 1,000 calories a day most times. But I'm out, I'm working, I mean, it doesn't look like I'm struggling anywhere.
I had the same, I mean, that's the thing is it's really easy to say to eat carnivore if you haven't ever done it for a long period of time. Like I was the same way in the gyms. That's what stimulated me wanting to fast, is because I was eating massive amounts of animals for years. And then you get to the point where you're like, this doesn't feel good anymore. And I've been vegan several times during my life, but it's there's no identification with it. It's just like I'm eating a lot of plant material now, and I'm not on the animals, or I'm detoxing from the animals, or whatever it is, whatever the story is that I'm running.
Okay, actually, I want to bring that back up. So thank you, Brain Metabolism, because he's saying I'm not even eating. Yeah, you're actually right, because we're going back to the truth is you don't need any food. Food is a medication. But when our systems are clear, our body produces stem cells. Like when we're fasting, we don't need medication because we're fasting. we need medication because we eat food. Once we eat food, we need medication of some sort, whether it's movement, sex, whether it's vitamins, whether it's minerals or water. Water's a medication too, because when I was fasting for 44 days, I probably drank less than I would consume now in a week over 44 days.
And so even if you think about the people that don't move and let's say sit underneath a tree and meditate, they're free of food, water, what you're calling, and then all the medicines, movement, needing to go out and about. So they almost become one with the planet in a
Yes.
way.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Yeah, they resonate with the frequency of the planet. And that's where, like, I'll tell you a good example is like we took everybody down for the hike. It's so funny. You take the entire group of people, like 60 people, you go on an activity, like we go on this hike down to the waterfalls, and it's pretty, I mean, it's a little bit taxing, but it's really heavy in the jungle and nature, right? And they come back and everybody goes to get their food and they're picking at it. Nobody's eating their food. And they're staring off and they're quiet. Nobody, because they got all the emotions out in the jungle. All the fear. They got these monkeys go rah, 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 like there's ones that like sound like
The howling monkeys?
yeah. And people are like scared shitless that the monkey's gonna come, and so they're getting all the fears out of their body. It's like there's these signs that say, "Hey, watch out for these snakes," and people are like freaking out. And it's like by the time they get to food, they have like 75% less food.
Right. Yeah, and you're in nature. So you're also absorbing the water that's, especially if you're in the jungle, all that water's coming into you. You've got the brightness of the green, which is filling up your chakras. You've got the grounding aspect. And that's where, like, if anybody's been surfing, it's the same thing. You can surf all day and not be hungry
Yeah.
at all
Yeah.
because you're just in the elements.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what, guys, it's like here's what I can tell you about everybody who wants to do the science on food and the body. I'll give you a fact about how our body works, and you can decide if science knows or not after this fact, okay? Every function in our body requires proteins in order to function, build, metabolism, everything else. Fair statement? So there are 2.2 million proteins in the body in the human experience. We have identified 50,000, but we only know what 5,000 of them do. So we only conclusively know what 5,000 out of 2.2 million actually do. So how in any way, any scientific way, can we say that we understand the human body when proteins are what make everything happen? There is no flipping way that I'm here to say the more I learn about the body, the more I realize I don't know shit. And I'm pretty good at helping people and fixing and working. I know a lot of how to program the body, but I have given up trying to figure out the science of it because the science that we have today is wrong. If the science was right, society wouldn't be so sick. And it don't matter who you are. Society is sick, and if they're not sick in their bodies yet, they're sick in their minds and their perceptions. Every disease on the planet Earth is at its peak. Every function, every disease, ADD, ADHD, gender dysphoria, we got cancers, didn't even have these diseases. We didn't have nut allergies 60 years ago. Today, everybody's allergic to a nut, and so if at the aggregate, when does the science become the aggregate of the result? When does science stop looking at the result? Because right now, if we look at the result of all the science, is that we are sick and messed up. So it's time for us to just say, let's forget the science. Let's go back to experience and take our experience and learn and share our experience. And that's what the human garage is. It's like, it's funny because everybody wants, they came here, they expect us to be telling them all the science and doing all the work. And I'm like, you guys are all sharing your experiences. We got them all working with each other. That's the science.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, don't
efficient.
take my word for it. Feel it.
Yeah. I mean, integration is the most important part of science. So, I mean, yeah, the science is just for the mind, for us to make sense of the experience but the science is so laughably behind what the actual experience is. Like you said, like we're barely able to explain the processes in the human body. We have no idea how everything is connected. We have no idea how the brain works. We have no idea how we integrate into nature. We're literally like, there's so many unanswered questions that science has. And then the answers that they do have are based on some sort of corporate interest that's funding that science. And so it's really up to us to be our own. I mean, I don't know what else to call it besides a scientist,
Citizen
but
scientist.
yeah, I mean, we all are our own scientists, and science starts with observation and reflection, right? We observe what's happening, we reflect on it, and then we do another experiment or have another experience based on that.
Wow.
And we do that in every moment of every
I'm
day.
watching the chats. It's all about the plants versus the slaughter. Here, guys, here's the truth, okay? Drugs don't make you high. When you fast, I did this. I took 340 milligrams of MDMA, 100 milligrams of THC in one dose when I was on my 5th day of a fast. So I'm completely, and it was like crickets. Nothing happened. You can't get higher than natural high. So our life makes us low. Drugs bring us back up there, and that difference is the speed of that difference is what makes us feel high. So basically, when our body has no food in it in the 3rd day, we're producing stem cells, which is healing mechanism. So when we have food in, we're utilizing 80% of our energy. So to everybody's arguing about food, guys, stop arguing about food, please. Food is a drug. Once you take food and you use it in consumption on a regular basis, even if you believe it's a medicine, you've now turned it into a drug. After you've turned it into a drug, stop arguing. And this is what let me get off of the whole thing of, what's bad and what's good. Like heroin's bad, cocaine's bad, but psychedelics are good, weed's bad. No, the only reason why we have all that stuff is because we take food. When we take food out, we don't need any of it anymore.
I would say that you don't know what you can't really experience what you're saying until you start doing things like fasting, and
Yeah.
you start to, if you're partaking in wine or weed regularly and then you go on a fast, you literally feel like all of that stuff is a come down from where you're at naturally. And I haven't had experiences like you where you do it anyways and then realize that you don't get high. I never stepped into that experiment.
I just always look at it and I'm like, I'm here anyways. I'm not going to die. Why don't I try it? That's usually my answer, right? I don't think it's going to kill me. You guys think it'll kill me? No, it'll kill me. Let's try it. But that's the whole thing. Is that right now we have all these talking heads telling us things about our body. But, when I got into medicine, I functionally operate in 10 forms of medicine at the doctorate level of practicing, but I wasn't trained in school academically. So I don't have the dogma of the academics. I just had my experience. I had some really good doctors I worked with, and I'd be doing something and they say, oh, that's like this. And I'm like, oh, really? Oh, that's kind of cool. I'm not defending my form of medicine. And because I didn't have a form of medicine, I was open to all suggestion, all ideas. And what I just noticed at the end is every one of them failed. Every form of medicine failed at the end because, and here's the crutch, is if my perception is the greatest state of awareness and healing in the body, then if I come to you and say, heal me, then I have altered the ultimate perception of my body. My body heals itself. So if I say you heal me, if I believe you're healing me, then the primary mechanism of healing is gone. Like I put a Band-Aid on or get a surgery or take a drug, that doesn't heal me. The Band-Aid just gives my body a little space. It doesn't heal me, my body heals. But if I believe that you're the Band-Aid and you're healing me, then I've given up my primary mechanism of healing to somebody else. And that's why this is my own story. I mean, I spent 20 years in pain. I spent $2.5 million, went to every practitioner you can imagine on the planet. then got into practice, spent another $15 million on my education, $15 million on my education, working with 10,000 people as my case study or my thesis, only to find out at the end that I had to do it myself.
Right. And they have to do it
Yeah.
themselves. They get to do it themselves. Yeah, I mean, if you pay for a certificate, then you're kind of incentivized to be loyal to it.
Yes.
You know, you sell what's in your bag, and so then you're trying to fit everybody into the box that you're trained under, and that's it.
So people would think. Do you think that people think we're extreme?
True.
Do you have a perception that people around, they look at us and say that we're extreme?
I mean, maybe not the people on this channel, but there's definitely it's a lot of it's easy to laugh at. And I think that when you take something like urine therapy or the fact that science is altered, those things are very easy to laugh at. And there's only a certain percentage of people that can laugh at it and also hold it up and analyze it and be open to it. But most people stop at the laughing part and they basically write it off as extreme, like you're saying. But this to me is just being human. If you imagined us, you know, without these walls and the jobs and the laws, this is all stuff that we would be doing on our own in the jungle. Like
Right.
it's just like
Right.
playing with ourselves.
Well, that's the whole thing, is that we were talking earlier, like we were doing the training, and we like take babies, and they're so fragile. It's like, oh, protect them, and they're pretty much indestructible.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
You
you
get
know,
like
like
do this
baby
stuff.
falls, it's not going to hurt itself. But an adult at 40 years falls, it's like, oh my God, you okay? But at babies, that's the whole point, is that we have this backwards look at what is the real truth, right?
I don't know if you've seen the videos of like the Russian people in the snow, and they're like holding the babies upside down and like twirling. They're like grabbing their limbs and twirling them around and dipping them in like ice, like the pond in the middle of winter, and they're like throwing them up, and they're basically just building resilience in the joints of the
Yeah,
babies and in the
I've
skin.
seen that.
And yeah, I mean, babies, we don't want to protect them. We actually want them exposed to as much of the environment as possible. That means the ground, the bacteria, have them playing with animals. That also means like cuts to their skin. All of that stuff is natural, and the baby needs that to be healthy. If you just take the baby and put it in a sterile environment, it's going to be sick for its entire life.
Hey, you know what's funny though is a good thing that you're in California. Good thing you don't have children right now, because if you did, CPS would be knocking at your door pretty quick.
Yeah, they're to take it away because I denied some shot or something, right? Or the baby's out in the sun and the sun's bad for it. Yeah, that's all questions that we have. Like how do we maneuver the landscape of the laws when building a
You
family?
know, and I think it's, well, unfortunately, I believe right now, if you're new in it, there's a difference. There's a frequency that you hit that people no longer bother you, and I believe that's where we're at, and that's why we can have these conversations and we don't get banned, because other
But
people
we're
get.
also not
Yeah.
combative, right? The people that go out looking for a problem are the ones that find the problems. It took me a long time of knowing a bunch of stuff before I had to prove that, or to the point where I didn't have to prove what I knew was better than what you knew. And you can see it in the comments of basically every post on Instagram and Facebook. Everybody's trying to say that what their perspective is better than everybody else's perspective. But in the end, everybody's perspective, like you said, give it to the people, let the circle figure it out. All of us are here for a differing perspective. So it's okay if other people have a different perspective. We learn from each other. And to take that stance allows us to not be combative, and it basically makes us untouchable because then
Yeah.
people can't combat with us because we're just going to agree with them.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Whatever your experience is, whatever you need to do, go for it. Because I have found that if I alter your experience, then even if you come over to my side, you still have to go through some version of that at some point, and it'll be bigger and worse later on.
Yeah, I mean it's the pendulum, right? They're going through their process, and they might swing your way or they might swing a different way, but it's okay. Everybody's a progression.
So you
We're all a progression.
you are very, like, you do sit back and think about every side. For
Oh
me,
yeah, you're different than me.
I
Yeah.
get on an opinion. You know, I've been thinking about every side for a long time. Then I choose a path, and I go at that path and I see what kind of friction comes out. Because if I don't see the friction, that's how, for me, getting opinions is sometimes getting shot at. I'm like, whoa, they didn't like that one. Okay, boom, bomb over there. But so it's a slightly different way, but it's the same thing. I'm looking for the feedback. I just look for it by pushing. And you sit back and observe, which I really respect. That's why I love watching your stuff. That's why I love learning from you, is because you observe, and that's a part of me that is not activated very much. I'm learning to, but
The crazy thing is, I feel like I'm currently like what you're describing, but I've been on the other side where I was a bulldozer or, refusing to take the sides of others or have different perspectives. And um, yeah, so I'm in this current like state where I'm able to hold all opinions as true. And I honestly like wonder if that's a phase, if this am I blinding myself to another aspect of the experience by taking this stance?
I know. I
Um,
think you're just. I've watched you. You're going through just a period of time in which I hold everything as true, and then I hold nothing as true. You know, and those are different. Those are just actually different states of awareness, because and you have this way of collecting everything and letting it build into this big collection, and then going, okay, I'm going to go over here, and um and I tend to fight a little bit more along the way. But it's the same net result, is that it's having all ends of the experience. And this is what we're encouraging people to start doing, is we want them to have the experience. We want them to wake up. We want them to have, to be able to question, to be able, I don't want people to tell me I'm right. I want them to
right.
go test it and say that really worked for me or didn't work for me. And that's what we're encouraging people to do. We're not asking for people to be subservient to our belief. You know, that's a worry that some people have. I don't want to be forced to think like you. And I'm like, you just come to one of our events. You'll see everybody thinks a different way, but they have the right to think that way here.
Yeah, the pushback is welcomed.
Yeah.
That's what shapes the whole organism.
And let me say something about that, actually, though, because there's pushback, but then there's negative pushback. I want you to have your opinion. I want people to have their opinion. I want them to be able to say what they say. But also, if I don't want to accept it, then I want it to stop there. And this is where the boundaries have been being crossed. It's like, no, I want to prove it to you constantly. And if I'm not sure, if someone's not trying to prove it to me constantly, no issues. You know, I can give them their opinion, but when every single statement, word, phrase.
Yeah, yeah, I can see the difference. And that's a maturity thing. It's respect the other person. Everybody has their own field, and if you're trying to overpower theirs, then you're exposing it's almost like a weakness in your own opinion if you need somebody else's validation.
So you're on the journey that, I mean, you've done this before. I've done it before a couple of times, but this last one is very different for me. I'm on the, I don't want to own anything. Like, I literally have, you know, like right now, 5 pairs of shorts and a dozen t-shirts. I put everything I own in a backpack, which is a really comforting feeling. But you're moving in that direction right now. So what is it? Why is it that you're doing that right now? And first of all, why are you doing it?
Well, we were experimenting with that. I'm feeling like my wife and I are both starting to feel a little bit too ungrounded. So we've been looking at leasing a place and eventually buying something, participating in, I don't know if we're going to buy anything, but we've been leasing for a long time, because we don't know about the stability of like owning a home if that's something we wanted. But we have been living out of just a few suitcases, all of our stuff's in storage for 3 or 4 months. It's been to just expose. It's been a little difficult for us to be working at the capacity that we'd like. So I think that we are going to restabilize a little bit, but in a place where it's going to be easier for us to travel
Kind of
around.
like
So
what
we're going to
we do.
integrate.
Kind of like what we do.
Yeah, we're gonna integrate a little bit of this lifestyle, but go back into how we were because we weren't, and then have like serious travel time at least 4 times a year. So we're reorganizing our life so that we're not just stable in one place, working nonstop for years without looking up and enjoying life. And I think that we kind of got into that over the last 4 years where we were just going in this grind. And then a few years go by and we're like, wait, what have we been doing for the last 3 years? We're doing the same exact thing. We don't, you're not any happier. We don't have any more things, or maybe we do have more things, but that doesn't bring meaning to life. So it's about just like living, making sure that in life we're actually living, we're getting the experiences that allow us to be human. We're seeing the world, because seeing the world is basically everything. Like that's like
Yeah, that's what I
everything.
found is that a lot of my seeing the world was tied to my attachments. But you know what we've done, as you can see, is we have places where people are all the time, and we come there, and it feels like home because it's a home, it's a single stable place. But like we're gonna be in Asia for 6 or 8 weeks here early next year, and then probably over, depending on what happens in the world, probably in Europe and Africa and Portugal. So like we want to travel, but be in these places for like 1 to 2 months at a time. But there's an emotion that goes along with that. Like when you're like getting rid of that lifestyle, when you're taking that first step out, there's a lot of fear, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, because we have the stability of our home and our stuff and our things, and that's comforting. But yeah, you're talking about going somewhere for 6 to 8 weeks. That's living. That's immersing yourself in the experience of what it's like to be a human in that part of the world.
Yeah.
And that's different than just going and visiting for a weekend or a week.
Yeah, you can't get it. You can't, like, if it's under a month, it's like you're just at the same place. You're just in a different location doing the same thing.
And most of the world, like for us Americans, and I think it's the same in Canada, we're given, our norm is like 2 weeks of vacation a year. But you go into other parts of the world, their norm is like 4, 5 months of non-working time during the year. And they do go places for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, where an American would go somewhere for 5 days. Like, so for most of the planet, they're not working like Americans work. So our level of like what normal is, and I think that I have done a good job my entire life to not be working 60 hours a week. I've always had a good, like basically part-time work life, still making good money, but at a part-time level so that I can experience life as a human on this planet while I'm here.
Yeah, not so much for me. I was like, like even the clinic, because at the clinic I was obsessively trying to fix myself, and because I mean I was in a legitimate 6 to 9 pain, like I can remember like months, like literally in tears at night, not crying but in tears from pain, because because I couldn't move or function. I'd go out and do my stuff through the day and get through it. So I was obsessive, but I'm finally catching that part-time effort of yours. And what's kind of cool is because we live and work together, we can accomplish a lot with and still have a lot of spare time. And because we're not driving to a location, all of our meetings are internal. All the conversations happen, like Jason, Cynthia, Aisha, myself, and then our team. They're all there. Like we're in the same spot. It's really freaking easy. It's like building a tech company where they all live in a house, but none of us are taking the millions and cashing out at the end because there are none.
In money, there's so much value that you guys are both giving out and receiving in terms of attention and loyalty and community and whatever sort of energy exchange you get from people when you go to these environments, and everybody's love, you know, they're loving each other. It's harmony. There's I don't know if that's payoff, but there's something else
money
in there.
Money doesn't do that. I mean, people that have all the money in the world make bad, stupid decisions because they're no longer happy, you know, and money's fictitious for the most part. Most people's lives, out of their daily living expenses, all the rest of it sits in a place they never touch. It's for security. It's a big security blanket, and most of them don't use it all. So after you get through the lifestyle you want, if you can pay for your lifestyle, the rest of it's just a security blanket. But people are finding out in America and Canada right now, especially that security blanket's going away. Interest rates in Canada, it's hilarious. It's like food that used to cost you $100 is like $260 right now.
I will say that what you're talking about is similar to fasting. Like if you go to a point where you're not consuming food, you find out where else the energy can come from.
Yeah.
And the same thing with money. And I have several times in my life fasted from the addiction to money and got to the place, like almost like a renunciant, got to the place where I'm renouncing everything. Like I don't need a car anymore. I don't need food. I don't need, and you learn a lot about yourself and your resourcefulness and your efficacy on navigating this planet without that security blanket and your ability to manifest, because money is one way of attaining things.
Yeah.
Just like it's just one way. There's a whole bunch of other different ways.
Well, I mean, look at our Mexico retreat center. That wasn't money. It was Aisha came in and she says, I want to be a part of this. She has, it's $600,000 worth of resources. She says, I want to be a part of this mission. She was our largest contributor in all forms and puts every day into working in this because that's what she wanted to do. But that we would have had to work to purchase that. We would have spent it, and have it cash. We would have spent another 2 years to do that, but we have it today. So like, and we have people that are like, come over and help us for like 4 weeks. Okay, we got your place to live. Here, we're gonna fly an airplane over to pick you up. We're gonna take all your transportation. You'll have everything you need when you're there. That would cost a lot of money to do that stuff, and that's very valuable. We have 100 pieces of content every week being generated from us, user-generated content. We would have to pay people to create that content, edit it, and stuff like that. But this is the whole thing: is as a collective, we can do this, and then eventually everybody can, if they want to, can be a part of that action or that collective.
That's amazing to me. I am actually a co-president of a nonprofit that had an idea to do this on a world scale. It was essentially to like an alternative way besides capitalism. Obviously, I worked on it for about 1.5 years with my partner, and we weren't successful or anything. But what I'm witnessing Human Garage successfully do is definitely like the same theme of what we had in mind in the whole thing. I could probably revive that nonprofit.
Yeah, we should. Hey, listen, that's part of the effort. Bring it in. So, the reason why it works is not because
it was called the Human Network.
Yeah.
Um,
And to get a human network, I looked at like Michael Tellinger and all these other things, and there's still a problem with these. You know, like out here they have the ARC, which is all these cooperative properties you live in. It's because we still want to be separate. We still want privacy because we think that that's important. We still have rights, not obligations. Like I don't consider myself having rights. I consider myself having responsibilities. I have responsibilities to the people, to the land, to my belief systems. And then the other part too is we no longer know how to live in community. Like when I'm a little older than you, but when I grew up, man, every mother in the neighborhood was my mom. If I did something wrong, my mom knew it, and I got grounded and spanked if I needed to get grounded and spanked by the other moms. And that aspect of community is gone, and so we no longer know how to live in community. We barely know how to work together right now, and
That's a lot of wasted wisdom
yeah.
as well, because usually the people having the kids, they're not the wise ones. They're the young ones. And so in a community, you've got the grandparents, the ones that have lived several decades longer than the parents, that are also imparting their wisdom to the children. And they're getting that, they're touching base with all of these elders throughout the week. But now we've separated ourselves into homes, and it's just like in these four walls of the homes, plus the TV, plus the teachers at school. That's what's influencing the kids, and we're missing a lot of wisdom.
Yeah, we actually there's a thing about it. It's called useless eaters. We take people. We have a production-based society, so like effort, production, creation things. So when somebody's older, they don't want to create as much. So we take and we don't value that anymore.
Right.
But you know, how does that roll out in a corporation, like a company? So what happens is if you've got a guy that's been there for 30 years and he's an MBA, you're probably paying him 350 grand a year.
A lot.
Yeah. Now you get a new one in for 120 grand a year. But that old guy can do something in 3 hours that takes these guys 3 weeks or 3 months to do. And so what we do is it creates more draw on the corporation. So it's fictitious. We think that we're saving money, but we don't. But the reason why the old guys have to go is because they get entitlement and they get sloppy and lazy because we measure versus money. We don't measure based on contribution. So if we measure based on contribution, like for example, if they're recognized, we just look at them from a business standpoint, say they're costing us all this money. There's anger about it, frustration. But if we look at the fact and we give them the ability to tell the younger ones, this is how I did it. This is my knowledge. So what we do is we take the wisdom and we put it in a parking lot or in an airport directing traffic or being a customer service. So the way that we are handling that inside the Human Garage community, because right now people that work and help us live on our properties, they don't get paid. But if you take away your rent, your food, your transportation, including airfares and cars, what are you left with? How much money do you actually have out of your monthly budget? Not very much. Most people, if they save 10% or 20% a month, that would be amazing. So 90% of what they need is taken care of. So what happens is that they're now able to be more productive because there's no fear about not, and we can measure their contribution. Now, when somebody donates, like we had a donation here a little while ago, a fairly large one for 175,000, but that would equate in our system to 3 points per dollar. Let's say this is as a dollar mechanism. It's a little bit more complex than that. But if you're helping yourself, you're doing fascial maneuvers, you're sharing it with others, you're telling people on the stories, and you're helping others. For every dollar of effort or point of effort, we give you 6 points. Now, if you are mentoring somebody who's helping themselves and helping others, that's worth 9 points. So that what we're doing is taking the value that used to be in wisdom of people, and we're moving that value down in there, so that somebody, like, I don't want to be on, like a year from now, I'm not going to be alive 5 days a week. There'll be somebody else doing it, and that's the whole point. And when somebody else does it, I want to mentor that person. So, but I don't want to worry about my food and my shelter again. And this is where taking and adjusting what we value, and as we adjust what we value, then we can start rewarding wisdom. And part of it is people donate like Aisha, a property that 20 people can stay on, that has chefs and food and all that. Well, that's valuable. That actually is somebody's, has a value. So we have people we're working with at private airplanes. So we're not there yet, but we're at the stage where we're starting to talk where we won't have to have commercial airlines. We can go places on private jets. Well, what that does is that we're not paying for that, but we get the use of that at value. Well, that saves us money, which we can then pay for other people's food and shelter and contribution, as long as you're measuring properly. That's what we've been working on, and it's taken us some time. But the one thing that we had to figure out first is what our values were, and if our values were different between us, it falls apart. Like what we value.
Yeah, because you can always consult the values to design the standards for the culture and the community that you're setting up. But yeah, thank you for explaining that for everybody. That's basically the dollar is less valuable than
The effort.
the contribution.
Yeah, contribution.
Yeah.
So we're devaluing the dollar through contribution. So we're just finding ways, and we're almost there, because I think in a year, the way that AI is going, we'll be able to measure through AI, because we can't do it through human force right now. Every post that someone makes, every time that they help out, answer a question, we'll be able to measure that in some way for contribution. It's like social credit, but it's social contribution. And the only difference is credit versus credit is a debt, which is an obligation. Contribution is when people are contributing, they're happy. But when they have to pay back a debt, they're angry, frustrated.
Yeah, and our entire society is run on debt. It's like, it's almost an energy of its own, because you got people, it's like dangling a carrot. So our entire money system, our entire society is that energy of somebody reaching for the carrot but not able to get it. That's the energy that like moves everything.
Yeah.
Because everything's an IOU.
It is so seductive to have it now, and the debt, but debt is death, obligation, fear.
Yeah. Which is a very real emotional state. It's one of the strongest ones. And so we're all addicted. We as a society, the most of us are addicted to that.
Yeah.
We're addicted to those feelings.
Yeah.
That's what moves us. We move away from fear, but that's a movement, right? But then there's like moving towards harmony and joy, that I hear you saying you're getting people into that zone as opposed to moving away from
there's
the fear.
Tipping point. Once you have enough people that are contributing from enough different places, then all of a sudden it's like to run a business, like we have, I don't know, we've got about 20, 30, we got about 50 people that are either full-time or part-time every day, and none of them are paid. But their contribution is their education, their time, their own healing, their ability to come, like we have properties that they'll come and stay on. Those are all worth a value, because even if somebody works a part-time job,
Tremendous value.
Yeah, to come and live in Mexico for like 2 months, that would cost a lot of money. But this is like, and they would have to quit their job. So this gives them the ability. It's like their vacation. That's why it works.
And spending time with the Human Garage team, if you were like let's say a normal functioning business, this is something that you could charge $10,000 a week and call it a mentorship program.
Yeah.
And there's many people right now. I mean, I know that's like in movement culture with Ido Portal, like that's how they do it. It's called internship or mentorship or something. It's literally like it was like 5 years ago, like $8,000 to stay with them for 1 week and see what they eat, see what they talk about, learn with them.
So
like, this
do
is
that.
the value.
We do that exactly. We just no cash. We don't
Right.
want
Like it's extremely valuable to be around
Yeah.
the team.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a lot of fun, you know, and you've had the ability to hang around us, like travel with us and stuff like that, which you see that a different function. And we've been working it out. Like this last year, it took us, you know, a couple versions of people coming in to kind of get it, because the first version is, hey, you're like family, and they're like, well, they don't treat their family very good, you know. And yeah, it's like family. It's like, but if I screw up, and I don't do my thing, and I don't make my bed,
Yeah. Shame.
yeah, it's like weird stuff like that, right?
Funny. All right,
Okay,
Gary.
it was great talking to you as always. I look forward to these conversations. We covered a lot of ground today. We talked about, we got through diet, we got through drinking urine, we got through disconnecting from the matrix, living in a community. Fantastic talk as always. I'm looking forward to next week, my friend.
Super exciting. Yes. Enjoy your day. Enjoy the rest of your conversation on here.
Okay,
Take care.
take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.